Thank you very much for being here.
Always a pleasure, Nora, even though the day is not a good one, but yes, thank you.
When the late president died, our third president, Dr. Haji Jacob, died last year in February, the NBC put up a world-class coverage and production of his funeral and the events leading up to the funeral. Accolades were coming in from all over the world. People who watched online, people neighboring states. The accolades were just pouring in. That NBC was second to none or on a par with the best of them. How ready is the NBC for this momentous occasion?
Yeah, no, thank you very much for the recognition in that regard. Look, at the time, it was really like a daunting task for us, as I said previously. We had to pull out all stops to make sure that we give the coverage necessary that would resonate with what the late stood for. Now, on your question regarding the news that we've just received a few hours ago from President Nangolo Mbumba, I think our state of readiness is formally, properly in place. And just for your benefit, on Thursday we were attending the unveiling of the book, I think Whispers of Freedom. I was with the chairman of the board, Mr. Lazarus Jacobs, and he was commenting also on the production because that was done live as well. And then he reminded me that, DG, be mindful that we are sitting with a very sensitive position currently, and I hope that as the corporation that is now the NBC for both radio, TV and online, that we will not let the nation down. I gave him the assurance to say, Chairman, we've been speaking, we've been looking at what we did great during the third president's broadcast, in order for us also to learn some of the mistakes that we might have picked up so that we can improve on that. So I can give you 100% assurance that we are as ready as we can be. And in fact, just about 2 hours back, I was meeting with the senior management teams within the editorial position of NBC, technical and support, where we were discussing the type of approach that we will be taking in making sure that we do make sure that Namibians and those beyond are properly informed. And we did identify all key people that we believe should form part of this journey as we are moving towards the process which I am aware that President Nangolo Mbumba will announce. So on the basis of that, already from our end, we really have made sure technically that we are as ready as can be. And then some of the challenges that we might have been facing, which would have been behind the scenes, we're hoping to iron them, all of them out as well. So I am very, very, very confident that yes, we should be able to do the same.
What measures have you put in place to relay the arrangements, at least the coverage of the funeral, to broadcasters in the SADC region?
That information is going out within the next hour, because remember the announcement just came through a few hours ago. And then as president of SABA, that's another role that I officiate in, I'm due to release a statement to my counterparts throughout SADC and on the continent and beyond to inform them. Already as we speak now, Mr. Peter Deng, who is the head of news, was informing me there's already about 3, 4, 5 entities that are saying that, look, we need to collaborate and work together in making sure that the person of the stature of the founding, that his passing is relayed at a global stage. So that process is running quite very well. And also because of the relations that we are already having with all major networks throughout the globe, we are able to also to share information with them as well.
During the late President Age's funeral, the NBC had state-of-the-art equipment where they were able to give running commentary from a truck as it was driving, and several other innovative features like that. Can we expect the same? And where do you still have the equipment, or?
Sorry that I'm laughing. We've been having that. And in fact, as of 2024, September, October, we transitioned from normal analog, which would have been digital, to high definition, which is known as HD. Hence NBC 1 and 2. If you look at it now, it's so HD. So that is with us. And then in terms of the equipment that we've used at the time, this is equipment that we've had. You can have the best of equipment, but if you do not know how to use it and deploy it and apply it, it may mean absolutely nothing. And this then rests on the capability of the technical teams that we are having. These are great Namibians who are working at the NBC that make people like myself, most probably, and the board and our ministers to feel proud. We appear to be tall because we're standing on shoulders of people like yourselves. I mean, I was reminiscing about today as I was coming through, because I saw you earlier on interviewing Dr. Toby, and I was saying, for me, it's again one of those periods in my life where I also have to personally reflect on where we came from up to where we are today. Yes, we are ready. Everything is here. You would have seen that there's been major changes in terms of how our visuals look on air and things like those here. So these are here. We might need one or two gadgets here and there, but normally you only get them in when the need arises. But 98% of what we've been using at the time, it is still with us.
Fantastic. I'd like to take you back now to 1990 and the transition from SWABC, this colonial mouthpiece, to the new dispensation and the new Namibian Broadcasting Corporation, with the Broadcasting Act that had just been passed. How difficult was that transition?
It was quite a very trying period, and it's good that you are raising it, because remember, internally in the country, we were led by leaders like the late Witbooi, Chongarero, Bessinger, the late Nick, and them. So when the transition came with the arrival of the Prime Minister to lead the process, people like yourself, Nora Apollos, Charles Mubita, Penny Kunde, Asser Ntinda, Mark Verban, I might be missing out the names here, but you all then came in and we dovetailed. And I distinctly remember one of the things that was immediately done. Dr. Mubita read the 8 o'clock news for 3 months non-stop. And that was a cultural shock for Namibia, because from those that were not used to seeing, without sounding offensive, black faces, it was something like, how do we deal with this now? And that transition then in the newsroom, there were two groups. There was the Mubita, Nora Apollos, Penny Ukunde, Argentina group versus the Piet van der Woofens and all of those. But that transition worked very well, and I think at the time the late HH, who was Minister of Information, was the one driving the portfolio of information and broadcasting. But I think we got through well through that, and through the leadership of the founding, we were then exposed to countries like Kenya to go and visit the Tanzanias, so that we could see in Zimbabwe, in Zambia, how other African countries were handling broadcasts generally. And also, if we look at Voice of Namibia, many of you were part of what was happening there. So that whole transition, it took a bit of, sometimes heavy wrestling in the newsroom. But the thing that was key and which needs to be attributed to the founding was the policy of national reconciliation, because the message that came through at the time was that, look, Namibia is here for all of them who are staying in it. So for those that were excluded at the time, it was time for those that have been there to also make way and make sure that the transition works very well. And for me in particular, I was a camera person at the time, and I think for a period of about 6 to 8, 9 months, I was exclusively traveling with the late founding and the late Prime Minister. And I remember I remember my first trip with the founding. We had to go to Botswana, and then from Botswana to Zimbabwe, and then from Zimbabwe I think it was to Tanzania. Now on that trip at the time, the government was very new, and the presidency were making use of a Learjet that belonged to, I think, Manpower. So we were seated there, and I remember that the Anjamba, who's now ambassador in Germany, we were in the plane. He came and said, Similo, the president said you must come and sit with him. Nora, I was shaking. Proximity to the founding, I was shaking. So when I got there, he was just peeling an orange. I said, yes, Similo, sit. Yes, tell me about Namibia. I was shaking. I didn't even hear what he was saying because I was concentrating on this figure of an individual that we would just read about, see in the newspapers and all of that. Then I said, but he's a cool dude. A cool dude.
How was he to work with?
Very nice. Very, very, very nice. He would always make sure that us from the media were accommodated properly, because sometimes you would find that the people around him would want to muscle you around. And I remember an incident at State House then. So I had to report because we were curtailed. We couldn't do the things that we would wanted to. And he came personally and he said that, look, people, please, the media is the platform through which offices like the ones of the president can talk to everybody. So within the bounds of being fair, you need to grant them access to things that they want. And since that day, we have had a great, great, great relationship. And I think Tate Kaulinge, who was then the secretary to, I think permanent secretary, yeah, was the one dealing with us and all of that, and Saki Gikemba as well. So from then on, the relationship just blossomed, and we had that relationship with him. And remember, he was quite a strict person, time-driven. If you have to deliver something, he would expect you to do that.
In a nutshell, how do you think he would like to be remembered, and what would you say his legacy is?
I think he was firm on the position around making sure that all Namibians feel free and that they belong. That was one of his key points. He would always talk about in Namibia, those who wouldn't want to be with us within a setting that is free, he told them they would know themselves what to do. And incidentally, when I came this morning, one of the songs that played was a Nina Simone song. I wish, something like, I wish I could know what freedom is. And as the song was playing, so I just had to think about all these things. Yeah. So he was a leader who could take decisions.
As a last question, Mr. Similo, you lived through, especially working for an institution like SWABC, which came with all its constraints because it was a mouthpiece for the apartheid government. What difference did you feel when it made the transition to NBC? Was there any difference?
Well, it was pitying our white colleagues who struggled with the aspect of understanding that Namibia is for everybody. And I remember also with the coverage of the 1989 elections, that whole period, the euphoria, the happiness that people had, many of these guys that were within the newsroom setting already started taking their belongings and started resigning and going. So I think there was a lot of trauma. And then when your generation came to come and assist, remodel what's the newsroom, what broadcasting in general should look like, we then started seeing a different way of doing things. I remember for radio, Miss Laina Manasseh was then also at the time appointed into a senior position within radio itself. And then the transition happened, and we all just discovered that, but there was really no reason why people had to be hostile. But you will also know that in our newsroom setup, we would have these sporadic fights, people voicing unhappiness, mostly through the change that came through. But what has been happening then is that the representation of everybody in the country then became something that we all could be very, very, very proud of. And I think that's the legacy that we've been living through up to where we are today.
Mr. Similo, thank you very much for joining us on the set.
Always a pleasure. And thank you very much for allowing us to inform the nation that we are as ready as we can. And then also for those that we will be contacting to form part of our interview panels, please, we would want them to come and honor the late founding. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that was the Director General of the Namibian Broadcasting Corporation. And of course, you have the coverage of the funeral, state funeral, obviously, of the late President Sam Nujoma to look forward to. And we will be bringing you live coverage of the life and times of President Nujoma throughout the days and every day up to the time of his burial.